Mike Jameson, who I had the pleasure of serving with. It's great to see you, and who is now the legal director for Metro Council and here to present. I'm going to have Talia run through a couple numbers, and then I'm going to turn it back to you, but I want to take a second and recognize some of the council members who are also here in support of you. We have Councilman Bill Pridemore, who is chair of the Metro Council budget process. We also have Council Member Dave Rosenberg, who is with us, and we had Council Member Russ Pulley. He's somewhere too. All right, Talia.
Good morning. The Metro Council enacts ordinances and resolutions that set public policy. They have a current budget of $1.8 million. They have 49 budgeted FTEs, but it's important to note that that includes council members, and that's not just staff. And they have a budget request for FY17 of $237,300, which includes 5 FTEs. Mr. Jameson.
Thank you, Ms. Lomax O'Neill. Mayor, late last year, Vice Mayor Briley put together a staff of both current and former council members to discuss not just replacing some beloved departed staff members, but also what is it that the council needed to function most effectively. Those committee members consisted of Council Lady at Large Erica Gilmore, Council Lady Karen Johnson, Council Member Kevin Roten, who's with us here today.
Yes, Councilman Roten is here. I wanted to just say, Councilman Roten, I looked right at you, yes, so welcome. I'm glad you're here as well.
I had already crossed him off the list. Also, former council members Jerry Maynard, Representative Darren Jernigan, and Karen Bennett. They met during the month of November and discussed what was it they needed from the council office staffing. They came up with 3 priorities. The number one, by a wide margin and by uniform consensus, was that they needed constituent service assistance. Those meetings were surrounded by some research regarding our peer cities and how other cities in Tennessee staffed their council staff. And several of them had staffing that were just never going to match. Chattanooga, for example, has a 1-to-1 ratio. Every council member gets a constituent service assistant. The difference, of course, is that we're such a larger council that that's not a realistic goal or objective for this council. So the committee began discussing how to apportion what smaller number could we use and function effectively. And the consensus was if we could request 5 constituent service assistants, or CSAs. With a 40-member council, those would divide into 8 council members each that they served, headed by 1 at-large and 7 district council members. If this were to be implemented, further discussion led us to suggest that we arrange those CSAs geographically so that we have the districts in one part of town serviced by a single CSA so that they could develop some expertise and familiarity with the geographic region as well as the council members that they serve. On a day-to-day basis, what those CSAs would be expected to do is, number one, address the routine requests that council members get. Some of the requests, in fact, many of the requests that council members get could be handled effectively by an administrative assistant because you're often functioning as a telephone operator connecting a need to a department head or agency that can address it. Secondly would be to coordinate department services that a council member may need for a given problem. And thirdly would be to assist the council member with what you might call administrative services, constituent communications, community meeting setup, and so forth. If council members can be freed of those obligations, or at least to spending as much time as they do, they can focus more on public policy, budget review, legislation, and other things that they would like to accomplish. Concerns then quickly turn to how would we track and measure the output of those CSAs to make sure they're effectively addressing constituent service needs. That led almost immediately to conversations with your Metro IT Director, Keith Durbin, and your Neighborhoods Director, Lionel Matthews, who, as you know, are working diligently on the Constituent Relationship Management, or the Hub. We've met productively with them, and our needs tying into that seem to integrate well. What we would generally need is a system that tracks the name identification of a constituent with with the problem, the date of the request, the council member or council district involved, the nature of the problem, the resolution of the problem, and the date of resolution, and tie up after that just to make sure the constituent is informed and kept apprised. That tracks precisely well with what the hub is intended to do. And there may be some differences in when the hub is eventually ready and when the CSAs would start, but eventually we'd be able to track those two fairly well, we believe. The total cost, as Talia noted, was $237,300. That covers total salaries and fringes for the 5 CSAs, and that is at the lowest administrative services officer level 1 level that there is. Any additional soft costs we think would be minimum to none. As you may remember from former days, the council office is awash in empty cubicles that are fully functional with telephone and computer setup. Some of the computers may need updating, but we think we can make do with the hard facilities that we have in each of the cubicles to have each CSA well staffed and well provided. And with that implementation, the hope is that council members can, as I mentioned, turn their attention to public policy-oriented matters, more broad-range legislative matters, and be more effective for their constituents all in all. So that is our ask.
So because we are actively having these conversations about the hub and trying to create a mechanism across all metro departments, including working with council, because I agree with you, being able as a constituent, if I call the mayor's office or I call my councilman or I call Public Works, and I've made 3 different phone calls and you got 3 different systems that don't necessarily all communicate, I think it's very frustrating if you're the constituent. If, as we look at potentially rolling that out, would it, what if you couldn't do all 5 first? Would there be some phasing in that might still be efficient for you all that would all still be helpful?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. And to be, as much as I hate hearing myself saying this, adding 1 would be 100% better than where we are now. Okay. We formerly had Ms. Chambers, Patty Chambers, that functioned in that capacity, and she was well utilized, and any one individual that we get will be well utilized. The number that we get, we'll simply do the math and divide the 40 by the number that we get. And
does Patty's position still exist?
The position does. She does not. She was costed out.
Right, but I didn't know. The position's still there, though. So if in theory you filled Patty's position, plus you had another FTE, that would give you 2?
That would.
Or similar, okay. How's all the new technology working?
I have had, we're actually having Metro IT, some of it may be user error as much as equipment, but in fact we're being paid a kind visit this afternoon by a kind employee at Metro IT to get us. We may have a router problem in our office, but we'll get that resolved.
Okay, all right.
Chairman Pridmore's learned how to handle the system pretty well.
And if he can do it.
Any other questions? All right, well, I just want to once again thank the council members who are here. Councilmember Kevin Roten, Councilmember Bill Pridmore, Councilmember Russ Foley, and Councilmember Dave Rosenberg for being here. Anything else? And who else? Oh, and Councilmember Tanaka Vercher. Tanaka. Awesome. Anybody else here? Great.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Rich.